Can you hear me all right way at the back in the bleachers? Thank you very much. All right, in that case, let's make a start. Well, we need to talk. One of my challenges now, I've been on the road, and bear with me because I look like it as well. I've been on the road for about a month now at a range of different trust and safety events. And we're getting really good, it feels like, as a community about talking about some things. There are also some elephants that we let sit in the room. So I think the challenge for us today is to take a big step back, talk about some of those elephants in the room, and just have a wider conversation about trust and safety and where we are as at 2025. Perfect. Thank you, Caroline. So some opening remarks and then some crucial background introductions, and then we'll get into it. But to say up front, this won't be a session where we talk at you for 45 minutes. We'll have some Q&A and plenty of time for it too. So start thinking now if there are things you want to talk about, things you want to ask the panel, or things you want to get off your chest. This is a safe space for all things trust and safety. But let's start with a little bit of background. Obviously, at the start of the year and onwards, we've seen a real ramp up in political pressure with the change of administration over in the United States. We've seen with that some platforms move into more of a space where they're relying on communities for their users to make reports, moves away from fact-checking, at least in some jurisdictions. What you might argue is a refocusing on what many people are using the phrase of core harms, so child safety, extremism. And that's an interesting dichotomy because then we look to this side of the pond. We look at the DSA and that kind of ever-maturing path as we're now seeing kind of the repeated rounds of reports coming through, increased focus on transparency, leveraging of legal powers that are contained, and similarly with the Online Safety Act. And it's not, of course, restricted to Europe or the UK. We see how busy folks at the E-Safety Commission are in Australia and really pushing forward there. So the open question, and why we called this the new table stakes of trust and safety, is where are we headed? Because it feels like, not to oversimplify, but that there are almost two directions and two options. One in which we retreat away from much of the avant-garde, proactive trust and safety efforts to a more reactive, community-based world, and two in which we lean in even further. But of course, to a certain extent, it's not that simple either. I've had a lot of conversations about the different regulations in play in online safety in the past few weeks and months, and there are divergent views. There are some who believe, one, the force for regulation is fundamentally good, but they say it with almost a tear because what they believe is that it will help raise the floor, set minimum requirements, and of course, for those platforms that are very laissez-faire with what they're doing, these are pretty crucial minimum requirements. I think we can all agree. But the open question some in the community ask is whether regulation does enough in the way that it's currently being employed across the world to actually talk about what the ceiling is. What are the very best-in-class efforts we can use in trust and safety, and whether those conversations are even happening in the same vein. So all of that and more we will try and talk about. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start with some introductions. If you don't know me, I'm Henry Adams. I'm Director of Trust and Safety at Resolver. We are a 20-year-old provider of trust and safety intelligence. What does that mean? Because people think of all sorts of interesting things when you say the word intelligence. It means tactically, we have a team of about 200 analysts who on a daily basis are finding the worst of the worst content, helping surface that to the platform partners and the regulators that we work with. And at a strategic level, we provide a huge amount of policy advisory support. Enough about me. Beatrice.
Hi. I'm not used to this as well. So, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. I am a fellow at the London School of Economics and Political Science. I have a PhD in politics. My expertise lies in the intersection between digital media and issues of race, ethnicity, gender, and power. And I am an expert in what I call the far-right politics of conspiratorial truth. So I am an expert in the ways in which the far-right has produced and disseminated conspiracy theories as scientific truth.
Hi. Great. Hi, I'm Vaishnavi. I run a child safety consultancy called Vianam Strategies, VISE for short. We work with platforms primarily, but sometimes with civil society and with governments to help them implement their child safety strategies. So if they need to develop new policies, build new products, implement new features, we help them do that. We are a team of former employees from industry. We've all worked at a variety of different platforms. I formerly was at Instagram, at Meta, at Twitter, at YouTube, at Disney. So we kind of take our industry expertise in solving these problems and advise our clients on how to do this. We don't build a specific tool or solution, but we kind of plug into existing teams, so existing product teams, engineering teams, content policy teams, to make their work better.
Perfect, and thank you both very much for joining. So let's take advantage then, and Vaishnavi, let's start with you, because by very much your introduction, you see a huge breadth of the trust and safety ecosystem with Vianam Strategies. So let's open up with the basic question. Are we moving in the right direction? Are we going up? Are we going down? Are we leaning into safety by design finally, or are we giving up just as we got started? What do you think?
I would say we are moving sideways. So what's happening, which is, I think, it's been very interesting to me, having been in the industry for about 15 years and watching these trends evolve. We historically would see a lot of arguments from platforms that, well, we can't build this baseline expectation of safety because we don't know what it is. There isn't alignment on what the right baseline protections should be for all users, which I think was actually a very fair argument. You don't know what level of risky behavior is acceptable, what level of interaction or engagement between adults and children is acceptable. And that was the argument for a long time. We then saw, I'd say over the last 4 to 5 years, an absolute avalanche of regulations, guidance, frameworks around what these common standards should be, whether it comes from the DSA or the Online Safety Act, the Children's Code, Australia, India, Brazil, Singapore, my home country. We've seen a lot of guidance around, well, this is the floor of where we expect your products to be. And so it's actually been a lot easier for platforms because now they have guidance. They know exactly, their legal and compliance teams know what they need to do. And platforms are making conscious choices about how to respond to that. In some instances, they are embracing safety by design and incorporating all this guidance into their products. In other cases, they're retreating from the product and saying, actually, we're going to go in a different direction. If this is the floor, we don't want to play here. Which I think both of which are very normal responses in a capitalist system, and that's what businesses should be doing. They should understand what the regulation is. They should decide if that's something that they want to engage with, and if they don't want to engage with it, don't be in the business. Go do something else, and I think we're seeing that. In the context of children, for example, what we're seeing is increasingly a number of platforms, and so I'll give one example in this room. Pinterest has come out very strongly in favor of social media bans and age assurance, saying very much that, well, we don't want people under the age of 13 on our platforms. We are not thinking of designing for them. We don't want them here. We support these measures. And that's a decision they've made as a platform. Other companies have said, okay, we will, we do want to have younger audiences, so we're going to release kids versions of our products. We're going to release under 13 COPPA compliant versions of our products. And still other companies are saying, well, we don't actually want to be in the social media business. We don't want to be, moderating a public square. We want small, encrypted, private communities where we can't see what the conversation is, and we don't need to understand what's going on in there. So I guess that's what I mean by sideways.
That was such a good answer. Well, okay, then let's move from the big picture of sideways. I'm going to call that an optimistic sideways, if you'll allow me. But Beatrice, let's maybe pop your Slide up. Oh, not yet. Not now. Oh, I like it. In that case, where do you want to kick us off?
Okay, so I would like to encourage you to reflect on 3 negative impacts of this more relaxed approach to moderation that we have seen with X and Meta. The first one is they are very reliant on communities' moderation, communities' notes, so they're relying on the public to moderate the content. Is the public ready to moderate the content? Do the general public have awareness of what is truth, what is not, for instance? Of what should be there on the platforms, what should not? What are the lines between hate speech and freedom of speech? This is something that I really like, because my research initially was very focused on far-right conspiracy theories and also how they have been performed to circulate as scientific truth. And while conducting this research, I found many, many videos with intellectuals performing these conspiracy theories as truth. And here, I'm not talking about conspiracy theories like, I don't know, the Queen is a reptilian or something like this. No, I'm talking about conspiracy theories that have been used as a justification for terrorist attack. I'm talking about conspiracy theories that have prompted many individuals to storm the US Capitol. I'm talking about these conspiracy theories. And they have been performed by intellectuals in public lectures, in documentaries. And I'm not only talking about social media, I'm also talking about how easy it is to find this material on Amazon, how easy it is to find this material on Google Scholar. I found videos performing conspiracy theories as truth on Google Scholar. So this is one question. Is the public ready to make this decision? This is the first one. The second one is, and to this one, I would like to ask you to do me a favor, if I may. If you have an app, if you use Facebook, or if you use TikTok, I'm not sure, could you open the app there? Take a look at your feed. What are the buttons that you see there below the image? Like, share, comment. What about report? Sometimes silence, omission speaks volumes. And this is something that I spoke in a meeting with TikTok from Latin America a while ago. It's very interesting that now we have this thing, oh, let's empower the public so they can report the content. Let's flag the content. Yes, so if we are going to do that, let's promote it. Let's put an icon there that the public can instantly see the icon there and report. Otherwise, it is very they need to go to click on the 3 dots and then report. It's not, psychologically speaking, and I engage with psychoanalysis in my study. If it's not there, it's not instantly prompt you to take that particular action. What the platform is doing by design is encouraging you to watch, like, comment, and share. Why? Because these actions feed the algorithms. They make more money. What about reporting? This is the second one. The third one, and now is the time. Thank you. Have you watched Adolescence, that TV show on Netflix that everybody's talking about? Okay. In that TV show, they mentioned the red pill. And I decided to bring the red pill because one of the big trends that we may see in the next months, years, is that red pills that are already widespread across social media platforms, they may become even more widespread. Why? Because they offer you the truth. And and this is the thing, sometimes the truth offered by them is illegal material, so then yes, it could fall into regulation. But very often, and I dare to say most of the times, it does not fall into the legal terrain, but it is still harmful, and very harmful. And in the series, they show that the red pill functions as a gateway to the manosphere, which is this culture that incites hate towards women, but this is just one part, one side of the red pill. We have red pills facilitating encounters with white supremacist content, with conspiracy theories, with Western chauvinist circles, all the way to neo-Nazi material. And another thing that I would, just to conclude, is somebody may say, oh, but red pills, this is so like outdated, it's just a symbol. What is the importance of a symbol? It's not just a symbol. It's a metaphor with the ability to create like addictive engagement. Because the more people engage with these red pills, the more people search for truths, the more desire they will have to keep digging. And that's how they start at the manosphere, and they end up in a neo-Nazi circle. And then somebody may say, oh, you are being I think that this is very pessimistic. It's not really like that. People just may watch this and just scroll and nothing happens. I will give you a personal testimony because I think that the topic is very important. And I firmly believe that speaking as an academic is not enough to give the sense of urgency about this topic. I've been studying this topic since 2019, and I saw with my own eyes, at my own home, somebody starting with assessing content in cryptocurrency communities, then on X, and then X started recommended content from Andrew Tate. And then by watching videos of Andrew Tate, this person, a man, white European man, and just to highlight, white European man, I am a black woman originally from Brazil. This matters here. Watching videos about produced by Andrew Tate, and then he started humiliating me, humiliations. But then he moved from Andrew Tate to white supremacist content to a point in which he told me, oh, I would like to read Hitler's book. I would like to read my Kampf because I think that this pressure that I have at my company, this diversity and inclusion thing, is really going far beyond. I think that Hitler had a point, and I want to see what was his point. He read my Kampf. After that, what happened? Started watching Hitler's speeches on YouTube. And from the humiliations that started very gendered, they finished it with, you are an inferior race, your son is a monkey. It finished like this. And obviously, I took action. But just for you to see, this is a personal testimony to show that, yes, these things happen. These things may happen may often than we can imagine, and these things are serious. You know, I think that's very interesting that we tend to focus on illegal content that is important, but there are all sorts of harmful content there that unfortunately the public is not right now aware the extension of this extension, and they are not they do not have the tools to report. So I would like to finish here.
Let that sink in for a second. But well, one, thank you very much for sharing that. Let me flick that. There we go. Back up there. And so a few things to recap from that, and we're almost into Q&A, but one more first. One is that we can obsess to the end of time about content and content risks, but especially in the global frameworks that we're now in, it's clear, I think, to many operators in this room that really the risk is one of behavior and behavioral nudges starting at a point where you're looking at what was evidently described as effectively mainstream content. Now, we can talk to the end of time as to how wide the Overton window has expanded and how confusing it is that some content that was extreme a few years ago is mainstream. But notwithstanding that, one of the most pernicious risks that we're now seeing is these behavioral pathways. And I hesitate here to use loaded terms like radicalization, because what we're seeing with groups like 764 or others is that often it's young children who are seeking more and more, if you like, edgy or gory or otherwise extreme content. It doesn't really matter whether it's predatory or whether it's extremist or whether it's neo-Nazi. And that poses some really interesting questions. I'm struck that, I mean, let's say if Vaishnava, you were saying sideways, I feel like backwards might be the word that you're not to put words in your mouth, Beatrice, but an interesting one there. But I wonder if I might offer this up as a vignette, because a lot of the conversations I've had recently have been in the video gaming sector, and that actually, I think, shows promise. And you might find this counterintuitive because video games often get some of the most stark headlines in the world of online safety. And yet, video games, by definition, are not public squares. They don't sit under that term that often restricts a lot of possible invention and innovation in trust and safety. They are designed to be pro-social environments. And actually, when it comes to off-platform conduct policies or signal sharing or any raft of areas that are right at the proactive hilt, the gaming sector often seems to be first one in the door. So in an effort to sort of turn the conversation a little bit, Vaishnavi, I know you do work in the gaming sector too. Is there some hope there? Is there something there that we can perhaps learn from in a mainstream platform context?
Yes, absolutely. So one project that we're working on right now that I'm very excited about is we are working with a civil society group known as ECPAT. Some of you may be familiar with ECPAT. And we're working with them to develop what will be, I think, one of the first set of guidelines for the gaming industry around how to develop better product and policy interventions for young boys, young girls, non-binary kids that are playing on your platform. Recognizing that the experiences of young boys, girls, and non-binary individuals actually varies pretty significantly in gaming. What's interesting about gaming as a sector, and this is really a very broad generalization, so I apologize for the broad strokes, is that games are typically designed, have historically just been designed with an average user in mind, and the average user tends to look a lot like a young boy or a man. But the help-seeking mechanisms within games are actually designed for more of a historically like young girl or woman. So for example, the option to report abuse, reporting as a tool is used much more by girls and women than it is by boys and men. There is a real stigma against reporting when you are a young boy or a man, that it's seen as weak or being a snitch or betraying your community in some way. And yet, if you're experiencing a moment of harm in a game for a very long time, the only thing you could do is report it. So then you would, and it's interesting to watch the kind of design patterns then embed into one another. Young boys don't report that much abuse when they're experiencing it in games. So on the platform side, when you look at the reports, you're like, wow, young women are having such a terrible time in our games, not recognizing that actually young boys may have a terrible time too, but just weren't telling you about it. And then you start to think about, well, what can we do to make young women and young girls and women, safer in our games, while forgetting this demographic that is also help-seeking and trying to seek help in different ways. So it's a really good example of how platform design and platform mechanics, and we can extrapolate this to social media, to marketplaces, to AI startups. Platform mechanics and design can go a significant way in helping people feel safer on the platform and find resolution for their experiences of harm on the platform.
100%. And it's an interesting one here because even if you're in a position, or maybe you're a brand new startup platform and you decide we don't even have the budget for anything proactive in terms of investigations and detection, But at a design point, if we do enough at the point of design, then you can eliminate so much of that harm. I mean, I'm very used to, from a law enforcement context, this concept of designing out crime, and I think it perfectly applies in trust and safety too.
And if I can add just one more resource, because you reminded me of that, within gaming, we're beginning to see more industry-wide resources become available. Just 2 weeks ago, there was the launch of the Digital Thriving Playbook by the Thriving in Games group, which essentially provides guidance for game developers around how to build in a more pro-social way. This is the specific type of design interventions, policy approaches, third-party moderation software that you can use to ensure a safer experience. We need more of that knowledge sharing, I think, even within our own industry. To come back to that question of table stakes, I think that's when you're in this moment of flux, it's typical for companies and industry to retreat into silos and not share information across the board. And I think that would be a shame if that were to be the case. So I think, for example, the Digital Thriving Playbook is a really good example of how we can share resources across industry so that even the startups can benefit from it.
100%. Now, this is your 1 minute or 2 minute, depending on how long you speak for, or 3 minute warning for entering Q&A. But perfectly suited. Let's go to them from a research and academic point of view. Wajnaba's point there just ended on we need to maintain a level of industry sharing. In a research domain, what's missing for you to be able to do your work?
What do you mean to do my work?
Well, whether that's areas that are under-researched, areas that you find challenging to research, what's in your wish list?
Okay, my wish list is very ambitious because I'm very interested in this industry that has produced and disseminated truth with a certain agenda, with a stigmatizing agenda. And I know that we have conglomerates in Europe, in North America, and in Brazil. And interestingly, in Brazil, they have already started actually, to develop something like Netflix, a far-right Netflix, amazing. So something that I would like to research, and I firmly believe that is not researched so far. It is this industry of truth, this industry of conspiratorial truth. People are really not talking a lot about this thing. And I think that this issue is very important because right now we are reaching a point in which we have conspiracy theories informing policymaking. So it's not only policy making at the state level, but even influencing the dynamics within universities and undermining trust in democracy. We have all sorts of conspiracy theories there, performed as truth and changing these dynamics of power. And changing in a way that legitimizes and normalizes xenophobia, sexism, and racism.
Well put, and I suspect a big chunk of that is also just how much we're missing the picture of the global majority and research thereof. Okay, well, I promised we wouldn't be talking at you, so in the last 9 or so minutes, we've got some time for Q&A. There are many experts in the room. If you have a point to make, an observation on, let me put it this way, what do you think the state of trust and safety is in 2025? Go ahead.
Technology, tech, platforms, that's the vehicle. You mentioned a great point about reading Mein Kampf. There was no internet and there was no home printed media, and look at what happened in Germany at that time without this ability to communicate. So what's the more fundamental problem that we're not solving?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. To answer this question, I will briefly engage with psychoanalysis. The major point is that I like to refer to our contemporary model of capitalism as effective capitalism, because the key commodity today is not only our attention, is our affects, is our precedes our attention. So something happened in a matter of seconds in our brain that directed our attention to a certain content, and that is monetized. Something happened in a matter of seconds in our brain and encouraged you to like or comment. And this is the thing. So the problem is much more complex than what we think. And when it comes to this situation of the intersection between digital capitalism and racism, it is undoubtedly linked to our white supremacist ideology, the one that underpins Western civilization. Because it is no coincidence that the intellectuals who are performing these conspiracy theories, they are predominantly white men. Why? When we think about an intellectual, when we think about a professor, very often the main figure that will come to our mind will be a white man. Why? Because this has been there for generations. It's something that has been built. And it's not something conscious. I would like to emphasize this. It's something unconscious that influences our behavior. And this behavior, when we engage with the digital platforms, it is monetized. So the situation is much more complex. I don't think we are doomed. I think that there is hope. But I definitely think we need to face the problem, as painful as it is. The problem is not something that will be solved only with regulations, with moderation. No, the problem is much bigger than that. And yes, we must do something because we have young people, children, growing up with this content, with normalized violence. So what will be the future? Because the children of today will be the leaders of tomorrow. If they grow up, use it to violence, what will happen? That's the big question.
I wasn't kidding in the big questions, but you went straight in at the top there, James. Just a couple of things to add, and then I'll see if Vaishnavi has some. From my point of view, and maybe taking on that sort of the business logic, we know anyone, particularly platform side, but ecosystem generally, if you want to get investment, you need to make a business case for trust and safety. It's a painful reality. One of the traps I think we've fallen into is maybe 5-10 years ago, particularly 5 years ago, a lot of us were making the argument, it'll make our platform safer, and therefore it'll make users flock to our platform above less safe. And by definition, that's competitive advantage. It's good, give me budget. And while that has a logic, where at least I've stopped using it in the last couple of years, is that really gets in the way of all of us joining ecosystem projects, signal sharing projects, whether that's the Lantern project that the Tech Coalition run, or hash sharing of GIFCT, or Stop NCII that's already been talked about this morning. The logic doesn't really work when we're wanting to do things together, to take down networks together. So what's missing for me in terms of the doom and gloom is a better put together business argument for investing in these ecosystem projects. I point that out as a question because I certainly don't have the narrative answer there. Vaishnavi.
So I'm just going to put my, wicked capitalist hat on and say that trust and safety is a business imperative. It is not, I've always been in a department that's been seen as a cost center, and yet anytime you talk about why don't we have as many users as that other platform, why don't as many teenage girls come to our platform versus that other platform, or why don't teenage boys want to engage with our products the way they do with others, 9 out of 10 times the answer for that is a safety related answer. The user experience answer is a small part of it, but a big part of it is if I go into that community, I know I'm going to have to deal with trolls. If I go, and I'll give you a really clear example. Twitter in India has far more men on it than women, and has always had far more men on it than women. And for a company that was thinking about growth, this was back in the 2010s, 2015, they couldn't figure out why. Why won't more women in India come on? So you have these marketing pushes, these campaigns, and then when you talk to the women, they're like, I don't want someone taking my photo and doing terrible things to it. I don't want to get harassed. I don't want to say a simple opinion and have people troll me. That was a business loss. That was a user growth, user retention loss. So just putting on my venal capitalist hat on, that is the incentive to build safer platforms. You will get more people coming to your platform as opposed to spending their attention elsewhere. Not necessarily another platform, but another form of communication. And so with young people today who have seen the kind of harassment or trolling that goes on social media, many of them have opted out of social media. They're like, you know what, I'd rather just play games with the people that I know, who I know are not going to, troll me or brigade me. I'd rather be in a private encrypted chat. I reject social media. Now that's a loss for a social media company, right? That's a loss of audience, it's a loss of growth over the long term.
All right, we have time for one final question. Go ahead.
With Meta scaling back on content moderation and independent fact-checking, it feels like it sets a sort of precedent or justification for other players to say, well, the bigwigs aren't bothering with this, why should I put aside my budget to design these things at the point? How do we as trust and safety stakeholders fight that tide? It's not enough to just wave and say, no, our thing is important, I swear. They can just say, well, they're not bothering, so why should I? We probably can't answer this in a 2-minute Q&A, but what do you think the first steps are to push back against that and to say, no, we do need, even though they don't think we need these, they are essential?
I'll vicariously give my views on this insofar as that's already become staggeringly political. Whether or not we believe the assertions that in a US-UK trade agreement, extensions or revisions to the Online Safety Act are part of the negotiation, whether there's truth to that or not truth to that, that tells us a huge amount as to just what you asked, how politicized that question is. It's obvious to all of us now that there are certain sort of executive decisions that are as much about kind of where particular jurisdictions are headed in political terms than sort of simple design. Albeit, I think we're in the right part of the world because clearly a European, and in legal terms, I mean both the DSA and the OSA context, are clearly at minimum backstops. But the point of optimism for me, and then we'll see what the last two want to say by way of final words, is that we haven't, I don't think, seen a plethora of platforms follow those decisions that are being made. And I think that's interesting because the opportunity probably was there in January for the vast majority of industry to do that if they show wish, but touch wood, we haven't seen that yet.
So I, as a former Meta employee, I would just like to state that these are my personal opinions. They do not reflect the views of my former employer in any way at all. I think an important question to ask your companies, does your company want to be a social platform? While it's true that Meta has drawn back from its community moderation, Meta has also drawn back from the concept of community. People are not forming community on Facebook and Instagram the way they used to. It's an entertainment platform. It's a media platform. It's where you go and watch creators. If you are building community, you're doing it in private Facebook groups, which were already community moderated to begin with. So I think it's an important question to ask if you are going to be in the business of building community and having social communities, if that's your business model, then you can't shy away from it. If, like Meta, for example, you're going to go down the entertainment graph or the entertainment path, then yeah, I think there's a good argument to scale back on content moderation.
All right, Beatrice, last words are yours.
I'll finish with some positive tone. So I definitely think that even though it's very scary and worrisome what is going on, I think there is a huge potential there for creativity, for innovation. I think that this is an invitation for us to think outside the box and look for alternatives. So for instance, can we, design a platform that ensures safety and that markets itself as a safe space? I'm sure that there are many people who would like to join a safe. It happened with Blue Sky. So it's possible. I think that sometimes just because the big tech companies, they are big, we tend to, they're doing this, it's not even worth doing something else. No, I think that now is really the moment for us to think outside the box and try other ways of challenging that.
What a perfect way to end. Please join me in thanking our panelists, and see you around of the day.